Today, Thursday, August 18th, and the time is 9:50, and welcome to the Regional Growth Committee meeting. Andrea is going to get us started with some roll call introductions. Andrea? Oh, forgive me. Yeah, I'm not a good chair, apparently. I'm a good supporter of a chair. So we'll start with introductions. I already introduced myself. Well, let's go to Robert. Robert?
Robert Schmidt with ULI.
Ari Bruning with Envision Utah.
Beth Holbrook, Utah Transit Authority.
Ginger Chin, Salt Lake Chamber.
Jaron Robertson, Utah Transit Authority.
Dory Johnner, Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Rosie Hernandez, Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Mike Sopchak, WFRC.
Brett Milburn, representing Mayor Troy Walker from Draper. And thanks for letting me sit at the big kids table.
Back to the table, Brett.
Brian Horrocks, North Salt Lake.
Laura Hanson, Governor's Office of Planning and Budget.
And I'm Andrea Pearson with WFRC.
Andrew Gruber with WFRC. Now let's go back to the audience here.
Chrissy Dahlberg, WFRC. Megan Townsend, WFRC.
Byron Head, WFRC.
Byron is our new employee at WFRC, just started last week in our Community and Economic Development Group. Welcome, Byron.
Bert Granberg with the Analytics Group at WFRC.
Julie Bjornstead, WFRC Long Range Planning.
Hugh Van Wagen, WFRC staff.
Ben Withrich, WFRC staff.
Did we miss anybody here in the room?
Marsha White, WFRC.
Thanks. Sorry, Marcia.
And then
Okay,
those,
it's easy to miss.
and then those people that we have online are Kevin Van Tassel, John Pullman, Natalie Hall, Jay Aguilar, Jim Harvey, Aaron Mendenhall, Ryan Beck, Kendall Thomas, Stephen Shields, Colby Oliverson, Ivan Marrero, Grant Farnsworth, Richard Snellgrove, Mayor Hales, Dina Blaze, Nicole Bordeaux. Thank you. That's the roll.
Thanks, Andrea, and thanks, everybody. This is another experiment in a grand hybrid meeting, but we're starting to get used to it together, aren't we? Well, our first, let's turn to a public comment opportunity. Is there anybody here that has a comment they would like to share? If so, just announce your name before the comment, please. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to our regular agenda here. The first item 3 is,
Ted, I apologize. We do need approval of the meeting minutes.
okay, forgive me. Thank you. So the meeting minutes were included in your packet for the meeting held on May 19th, 2022. And we are looking for a motion here.
So moved.
That was Richard Snellgrove with the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
From, I think, Jim Harvey with the second. Okay, all in favor of the motion, please signify.
Aye. Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
And are there any negatives? Okay, so that motion carries. Thank you. All right. Now, for late joiners, I am doing my best to fill in the big shoes of Mayor Ramsey. She is on her way. So if you're thinking, what is Ted doing? I am filling in for Mayor Ramsey, who does a far better job than I could do. But let's jump into our regular agenda here. Our first item is a big multi-pronged item. It is the Wasatch Choice and the 2023-2050 Regional Transportation Plan. And when you look at your agenda, you'll see 3 items that kind of look different from each other. There's an update on the Regional Transportation Plan. an update on the Utah's statewide growth conversation, and on stationary planning. I think what the thread between these three is that they relate to coordinated planning and thinking through how collectively we dovetail our transportation planning with our land development questions and our economic development. They're very different from each other, but they have that shared thread, which is why they're under this banner of Wasatch Choice. Now, so the first item is the Regional Transportation Plan update. So you know Wasatch Choice Regional Vision, the transportation plan is the central transportation element of Wasatch Choice. And RGC, as you may know, you act as the steering committee for the RTP itself, Regional Transportation Plan, RTP for short. So Jory is going to lead off. Jory is our long-range planning manager, and he's going to give us an update on what has happened with the Regional Transportation Plan, where we're at, some of the upcoming near-term things, and by all means, put on your steering committee hat and provide guidance as we go through this. Jory, take it away.
Thanks, Ted. Can you hear me? Good, okay. Move forward as Ted made mention. The RTP is the transportation leg of the Wasatch Choice, call it three-legged stool, right? We coordinate economic development. We look at the land use around the region and all of the transportation needs. The regional transportation plan is developed looking through and the 10 Wasatch Choice goals that the Wasatch Front Regional Council has adopted. So you can see them on the left side of the screen there. They range from livable and healthy communities, safe user-friendly streets, clean air. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the entire plan is screened with through the lens of these goals. As a reminder, the regional transportation plan is multimodal, so it includes walking, biking, roadways, transit, and that tied to the land use. It's on a 4-year cycle, so we have a currently adopted regional transportation plan. It was adopted in 2019. We have an amendment process that we've amended our plan, I think 4 times now. The last one was done about a year ago, where we revisited the Wasatch Choice vision, worked with the local communities to update the centers within the vision. It's financially constrained, and it must meet our air quality conformity. Last but not least, it's not just a wish list of projects between now and 2050, but we do identify priorities within that time frame in about buckets. Okay, keep going. Okay. I don't see the screen of what everybody's doing. Okay, so over the last couple of years, we've been working on the regional transportation plan. As soon as the plan is adopted, we move right into developing the next plan. So we've looked at external forces and policies. We've drafted a preferred scenario, and we've gotten up to needs-based phasing. And I'll cover a little bit of each one of those here in the next few slides. Just as a reminder, you've all seen this. There are 22 external forces and policies we looked at. You helped us narrow this down and identify which forces and policies we wanted to focus on in this regional transportation plan. This will not be the last time you see these forces. Some of them we just put on the shelf or the parking lot, the bike rack to visit in future plans because the technology isn't quite there. We don't have enough data, but some of them we did move forward within our planning process. Connected autonomous vehicles, we're adjusting our travel demand model to look at that. We're looking at e-commerce and delivery. Who hasn't made a purchase from Amazon or did a Smith's delivery in the last few weeks, right? We're also looking at transit signal priority and transit, high-tech transit systems, and a few other policies here. Julie's going to cover a few more of these in the upcoming presentation, but just as a reminder, this was the first plan that we really dove into these future technologies. We're at the tip of the iceberg. Future plans will dive more into these, so continue to expect to see these and even few other ones. We developed a preferred scenario this last fall. We met with all of our local communities at workshops. And just as a reminder, the preferred scenario is what's needed between now and 2050, the end of our planning horizon. We didn't dive into when it was needed. We just wanted to know what projects and how those tied to the land use between now and then. And so we worked with local communities, we worked with our transportation partners. We met with key stakeholders over this time, Envision Utah, universities, key landowners owners across the region. All this was done through a big part through our interactive maps that we develop here with the ability to leave comments, track things, look at the different projects on top of each other. Hey, Mayor Ramsey. And then you might be asking yourself,
With
okay,
respect to
done that, what exactly is?
making sure that our landscaping ordinance is consistent with.
Thank you. What is phasing? So phasing is prioritizing the needs and addressing financial constraint. And you can see here, we do that process after we identify the needs and place them into virtual buckets or timeframes for our process. We have as I made mention earlier, our entire process is developed with the Wasatch Choice goals. So we've scored every single project. There's over, I believe, 1,300 projects, road transit, active transportation in our plan. We've scored every one of those projects individually and compared them to each other during this needs-based phasing process. So that's where we start. We don't 100% rely on our needs-based phasing or our scoring. We know that there are other needs and consideration that just is not captured in our process. And so we work, again, very closely with our partners, transportation partners, local communities to review those needs. And just this last spring, we developed the first round of when projects were needed. We worked with our regional growth committee, technical advisory committee. So that's your planners. We sent this out to your engineers, which are the Transcom Technical Advisory Committee. And we received almost 300 comments on those need-based phasing. So we've been working very closely with everybody on that piece. Now, we have now stepped into the financially constrained portion of our plan where we've got to not just identify when the project's needed, but how much funding do we have in this first 10 years, the second 10, and then the last portion of our plan to actually fund those projects. We've worked very closely with the other metropolitan planning organizations across the state, UDOT and UTA, to develop a financial model. That model looks at all the revenue that we currently have. We look at growth rates of sales tax, fuel tax, registration fees, federal funding. We look at project costs so that all the agencies within the state are using the same planning level costs for projects. We assume new local option sales taxes. We look at what new revenue is reasonable in the future and work with our partners to be consistent in that realm. We have two new funding sources for active transportation that we incorporated in this model, the Transportation Investment Fund, Active Transportation, and then also the TTIF, the Transit Transportation Investment Fund, First Last Mile programs. We've incorporated them, and this will be the first time that we'll actually have a financially constrained active transportation plan within our regional transportation plan. So we're working really hard to do that and consistency. And then we also updated our financial model to incorporate all the new federal funds through the IIJA programming. So to give you a snapshot of what that looks like, you can see here, there's nearly $1 billion of active transportation needs and slightly less funding available, even with the new state funding, assuming some of the federal funding that WFRC programs through our CMAQ and transportation alternative programs, local option sales taxes, we don't meet the need of active transportation. On the roadway side, we have nearly $25 billion of needed projects, and that's state and local funds. And that's not all the projects. Those are the projects that would fit within our regional transportation plan. So the collectors, minor arterials, freeways, interchanges, things like that. Not the local subdivision roads that you still are working with your developers and building. This is that level. So there's $25 billion with only about 17 or $18 billion of revenue expected. So there's a big gap there. And then on the transit side, similar message, right? Roughly $9 billion of needs with about $5 billion of funding available. And those include our core routes, bus rapid transit, streetcars, front runner, light rail type of projects. We're also working very closely with UTA on their other innovative mobility, which are like micro transit, which was implemented in south part of Salt Lake County and South Davis, Salt Lake City. We're working, that doesn't include express buses or the local bus service. So we work with, and when we report these at the unified plan level, it'll incorporate all the needs from the local level all the way to our regional transportation plan. And in the last plan, there was about $110 billion of total transportation needs across the state, including new roads, new capacity for transit, operating, maintaining those over the next 30 years. So we'll bring that to you in the future here.
Dory, before you move off of the money, let me just note, go back one slide. What Jory was showing you was revenue, needs and revenue just in the WFRC area. And as he noted, this aggregates into Utah's Unified Transportation Plan. For those of you that are really interested in the money and the funding, yesterday at the legislature, at the Transportation Interim Committee, they asked for, and we did a deep dive among all of the transportation agencies into transportation funding. So if you want more info about that, we're going to include a link to those presentations that happened yesterday at the legislature in the next WFRC newsletter. And if ask me, ask Beth Holbrook from UTA, who was there, ask any of us, but more to come if you want to dig deeply into that.
And this is a summary of by each mode between now and 2050. We do have those also broken out by phase. So in those 10-year, we'll be bringing those to you in our upcoming workshops. And that's where our next step is. So we're currently developing the financially constrained plan. It's still in draft form. We've reached out to your planners and engineers to get an initial review of that. We're working with UDOT and UTA. But this fall, we have another round of our fall workshops focusing in on transportation this fall. And we're still working on our unified plan coordination, the overall messaging of the unified plan, and the work that will kind of bring that together at the end. All the MPOs in the state will have their updated transportation plans this next spring, May and June timeframes for all 4 MPOs and the state. We'll go to public comment this winter, and so expect us to have that out for availability in about the January timeframe with adoption of our regional transportation plan, as I made mention here, May 25th, 2023. So I mentioned the small area workshops that we're going to focus in on the financially constrained draft plan. Just as a reminder, we have 8 of these across the region, and you saw that in a map earlier. We're going to keep that the same. So there's 1 up in Box Elder County, 2 in Weber County, 2 in Davis, and 3 in Salt Lake County. And they're made up of 4 to 9 communities in each of those areas, including the counties. And we invite UDOT, UTA, and other partners to attend those meetings. So we are in the current development of those workshops, with the main piece being the regional transportation plan. But Ted, we want to utilize you as our regional growth committee. We're open to how to best take advantage of this workshop with other ideas as well. So Ted, I don't know if you have anything else to add with that.
Yeah, thanks, Jory. So those of you, how many of you have been at one of these workshops in the past? And for those online, you can do a thumbs up or anything like that. Okay, so I think that you may know that these are unique, and that word unique gets used way too much, but these are unique because it's nearby communities. So you have geographic grouping of communities, and then within those, you've got, as noted here, mayor, city council, planning commission, and key staff. So I guess the opportunity here is, when do you have a chance to meet with a small group of your nearby communities and with that kind of vertical involvement within each of the communities? And so we know that it's a big opportunity. We know that you value it, and we don't want to just have it be, well, let's hit the regional transportation plan needs, which we have to do. We want to ask you, well, given that unique opportunity and having UDOT and UTA likewise at the table, what else do you think we could explore within those meetings? So I'll just give you one example. Communities could take turns saying, here's a few things we want you all to know that are happening in our community, or questions we have for you. Now, and it could be how we organize the meeting. So I'll just stop talking now, blessedly. But if you have some ideas and you can brainstorm, that could be explored for these small area workshops.
You'll stop talking, I'll start talking, just to emphasize one point, and then Mayor Ramsey, hi, nice to see you. These workshops, as Jory said, are specifically about transportation. I want to emphasize this. Some of you may feel like you have workshop fatigue, right? There's a lot of workshops that get scheduled, lots of opportunities, lots of meetings, terrific. We work together, growth issues, really important to confront them. These workshops are where we will bring to you, as Jory said, the draft of the regional transportation plan, which is where all major transportation projects are born for the decades to come. So this is where we put in front of you and your communities the maps, and you look at them and you give us feedback. All right. I just want to be really direct about what happens at these meetings. And so you and your city council and your planning commission, we need you to look at them and say, yes, this reflects what our priorities are. Wait a second, this is a little bit off in alignment. You know, that's where we get that critical feedback specifically on transportation that translates directly into what goes into the official transportation plan. So that's the focus of these workshops. And as Ted said, they're in your small areas. So it's you and a few surrounding communities. Okay. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, well, I'll just add my own emphasis that we've got a lot of new folks on our committee this year, and we appreciate you serving. If you have not attended one of these, I can't put enough emphasis. I'm going to echo, but from my seat rather than their seat, the value of being here. This is our opportunity. We get to weigh in. You get to say, yep, this is a need, or, you know, maybe have we looked at close at this? You may not have heard that we have now approved this in this area, and we're going to need you to be aware of that. This is the opportunity. So anyone concerned about where the transportation plan is going to have your community land, this is where you want to be. So they're scattered throughout all the counties. They're very conveniently located. We gather as peers and we work on this, and it is important. Bring your best people and your best ideas and your best information, because this is where the rubber really meets the road in making sure that we have this plan right as we go forward with approving a plan for the next 4 years. Jory, do you have anything else you'd like to share?
I was waiting to see if there was any input on ideas that we could consider discussing at the meeting. If there's none, Beth, it looks like she's moving.
I was shifting everything around to grab my microphone. You know, I absolutely agree with what Mayor Ramsey and Andrew and Ted have said. I do think it is so critical for us to take a look at these things. And I would also like to suggest that one of the elements that we try to incorporate is that when we look, so I'll just talk about TOD, but I think it goes further than that. TOD is a development that talks about X amount of acreage in a particular location. In our case, it's transit, but there's a lot of other elements that I think could be incorporated. And so what I would like to suggest is that the economic development and the housing be kind of some experts or some perspectives maybe brought in to discuss that, because we need to kind of take a look at our system and say, we can't be doing all of these great investments of time and energy and knowing those communities without incorporating the other needs. And housing, I think, is a key one. There's also connectivity in general. People move here for lifestyle. So I think the economic values would be a great addition to that. And I know you have economic development directors from those cities, but I think that there's other areas. I was just telling Ginger, I thought the chamber is a great option. They're representing the private sector. I think that the more that we can do to say, we want to take a look at this from an overall perspective, I think that the better we'll be serving all of our communities.
Anybody have any additional thoughts to share with Jory or with everybody else?
Well, just, I'll note, several people online, Mayor Zoltansky, thanks for joining us, and Mayor Hall are asking, well, when are these workshops? So Jory, where are we at on sharing? Ta-da. Thank you. Go ahead, Jory.
We have just set the dates. We have not sent out the save the date calendar appointments. Expect those in the next few days. We've taken a look at, as a reminder, or so you know, we've looked at all the planning commission schedules, city council meetings, our board meetings, conference season this fall, right? League of Cities and Towns, UDOT conferences, fall breaks, holidays. Hopefully we didn't miss anything. It's a little tricky. As you know, not all of your meetings match up with your peers or your adjacent communities. We will send these out, but if you look at these now and you see something that's off or that there's a big conflict with you and your community, let us know as soon as possible because we can make some adjustments to the dates. But these will be sent out. We are planning for them to be from 4 to 6 o'clock. So we know that your city staff is available during the day usually. Your planning commission and city council, a lot of them have full-time jobs and are available in the evening. So we've tried to split the difference. This is pretty consistent with what we've done. And we're looking to have them in person. So we've done the last few over the pandemic in a virtual setting. This one we're looking to come out to you. So we will be looking to set those locations up and the calendar appointments. Locations by the end of the month. Expect the calendar appointments as a save the date soon. Ted.
An alert viewer might think, where is Tooele and Morgan on the list? We are scheduling those. We just haven't landed the dates. And also the agendas for those will be a little different and custom fit to the needs of Morgan and Tooele. So we will be working with especially UDOT and the county leadership to work through those agendas for those two.
So as a reminder too, UDOT has been facilitating what they call rural dialogue, long-range planning rural dialogue meetings. We've hosted 2 of those meetings in our office for specifically Morgan and Tooele. Those 2 communities fall outside of our urbanized area and fall within the UDOT state rural planning areas. We're participating. We have Julie Bjornstad, who's working with Morgan County. Wayne Benyon works with Tooele and their RPO. So we'll work with UDOT to see if we have fall workshops and what their schedule is on continuing their workshop efforts, because they've had 2 of them. I think they just had one in the last couple months, like maybe June. So with that, Mayor, that concludes my presentation. If there's any other questions, if not, we can move on to B.
Okay. Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for your patience. I was a couple minutes late. Today's the first day of high school. You know, they have an A day and a B day. And I got a panic phone call over a glitch with a concurrent enrollment registration that had to be fixed this morning. And that was very unexpected and took far longer than I anticipated. So anyway, thank you for your patience. My daughter can take her class. It's all good. All is well. But thank you for hanging out and waiting and proceeding. We are now going to move on and discuss Utah's statewide growth conversation. This is something that I am thrilled that we have the chance to talk about because it's really important that we do. And it's something that I'm grateful that we were able to receive funding from the legislature to be able to make happen. As you have all heard, we have the opportunity to be involved in a statewide conversation about growth. And it's something that a lot of us have been looking forward to and hoping for quite some time. The Utah Governor's Office of Planning and Budget is leading this effort, and they're collaborating with WFRC and other key partners. We're grateful to have a seat at this table and to get to be part of the conversation. This effort aims to help residents understand the benefits of our shared plans, the Wasatch Choice and our integrated state transportation plan, which every time we meet and even mention our unified state transportation plan, we put emphasis, and there can't be enough emphasis on how special that is. Ted said unique is a word that is kind of overused. I can't think of a better word for our state unified transportation plan, and hearing from other states and having the chance to visit with them, they've said very clearly, that's so awesome. And we will never have that, and so we're the envy of the nation with our unified transportation plan. But this is an opportunity to really help residents even understand that there is a plan like that, because a lot of people don't know. We also intend to ask residents for their ideas on how to address growth, and the output will inform the big moves that the state of Utah could explore that will complement our Wasatch Choice regional vision as we continue to grow. So I'm going to turn it to Ted first to briefly explain the difference between this and the Wasatch Choice before we turn to Lara Hansen. And then I just want to say thank you, Lara, for being here. Lara is the Utah Statewide Planning Coordinator. She has a big job with this. There's a lot of experts and a lot of good people giving input, but Lara's taken the lead on this and is point person for the governor's office and for the state on this. We appreciate you being here and know that your expertise and your years of participation in all of your various roles have helped land you in exactly the right spot for this. We have full confidence in you and hope that we can all be helpful in determining the right path for this and what the best outcomes could possibly be for this effort. But there's a lot to it. So first we'll turn to Ted and then we'll turn to Lara. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Mayor, and I'll be very brief. We know Wasatch Choice. Those in the room, you can see the poster on the left of the screen. And when you see that, you see a map. It is a coordinated, if you will, grand plan developed from the grassroots that has geographic specificity, transportation projects, the location of growth centers. So this effort doesn't redo Wasatch Choice or any similar products around the state. It does not redo Utah's Unified Transportation Plan because those are specific plans with a geography. So what is it then? And really, Laura's going to do a better job of conveying this. But what are those big moves that we take as a state? What are those things that complement Wasatch Choice? And how can we have a broader conversation with the general public around their concerns about growth and how they would like to resolve them? So it's a broader conversation. It doesn't redo what we have done collectively with the Wasatch Choice. And I know Laura's got a lot of thoughts on this, so I'll turn it to Lara.
Thank you so much. First of all, Mayor, thank you so much for the kind words. I really appreciate that. And we're so excited to be collaborating with so many different partners here in the room, including the Chamber and Envision Utah, the League, Wasatch Front, all the AOGs. We have a great partnership here. And we're very grateful for the support of Wasatch Front Regional Council and the League of Cities and Towns in helping to get this funded last legislative session. So what are we doing here? And Ted and Mayor Ramsey gave an intro, but really the message that we want to share with the public is there are different possible futures for Utah. And we get to be the ones who guide the growth and the way that we're headed in our future. And so the outcomes of this will be hopefully moving beyond just development pattern preferences, but result in these big policy moves, things that we can actually implement that help us better manage growth, make sure that we're growing in the way that we want to. Our efforts hopefully going to be identifying some accountability metrics against which our growth measures can be evaluated so we can see if we're actually making progress, if we're moving the direction that we want to. We feel like it's important to establish a baseline of growth facts with the public. I think there's a lot of misunderstandings that maybe we can just close the doors to growth and just just stop. Let's maybe just not invite more people here. That's not really a reality. And so helping people understand some of the facts that are around growth, including this isn't new. We've been growing continually for a long time. We can't just stop growing, and the way that we grow really matters. And you may be asking, okay, how is this process different? Haven't we done this before? And I think Ted emphasized this, but really we're not creating a new vision or a new plan here, but we're trying to illustrate how existing broad visions and plans fit within various different growth scenarios, and how these tools that we've got in place are helping us be intentional about the way that we're growing. We're trying to avoid map-based development pattern-oriented scenarios like sprawl, current development pattern. We're not looking at that. In favor, we're going to be looking more at local visualizations of like, how could my community type grow? What does that look like in the future? You know, I live in a suburban area. Somebody else lives in a really urban area. What are the different future scenarios for those types of areas? And we're really focusing on listening to the public and asking them. And I'd love to just start that listening with you all as a focus group, if you're open to sharing some feedback with us today. And, you know, the first, I think, question that maybe, and Ari, maybe you and I can tag team on some of this since we're collaborating closely on this, but you know, how do people feel about growth in your communities, and not just the vocal minority, but the broader community? How are you feeling your communities are approaching growth? And we'd love folks online to chime in as well, please.
Or are you asking like from a personal perspective, just in the general sense?
Yeah,
or
I mean,
professional, both, all of the above?
Some of us wear, you know, some people wear elected official caps, and you represented a community, but we all live in a neighborhood, right? So, you know, think of your neighbors, answer in whatever context makes sense for you.
I would say just from a personal perspective, so I have a house in St. George. People in St. George are terrified of the growth. They're really worried about the growth. They know it's coming, but it's happening so quickly that there's a lot of concern. I know that's not your geographic area, but I think it matters in the statewide conversation. For the most part, from our businesses, and we talk about growth because we've had a lot of conversations, they see it as a good thing, and it's progress in our state. But with that comes challenges, and I think the real issue is how we're going to address those challenges.
Thanks for sharing that, Ginger. Other thoughts? Draper's growing, North Salt Lake's growing.
Well, from both a professional standpoint, being in Draper, and also a personal standpoint, and I live in South Davis County, kind of what I see is, I think there's some trepidation, starting to be a fair amount of trepidation about the growth and how fast it's come about. And a kind of a lot of this pace, you know, slow it down a little bit, and we're kind of losing what we're accustomed to, or the culture of our various communities. And I think that makes people apprehensive and whatnot. So
You raised a really interesting point, and something that we've been talking about is, what are we trying to save, right? And I'd love people to articulate what you think it is we're trying to save about our communities, and that we're worried that we might lose.
I think a lot of what people are thinking that they're trying to save is how well people are connected, and kind of the hometown feel, so to speak, where neighbors know their neighbors, versus the mindset is, and sometimes it's just not being up to speed or understanding, you know, the way the world is moving, or the needs and desires and wants of residents. Not everybody fits within the same mold or context. And I think there's the fear of losing that connectivity-ness, the connectedness, when you're, you know, go out and kids play in the street, and, you know, you have your neighborhood barbecue, versus a little higher density. You don't necessarily have that opportunity. So you've got to make places for that to happen.
Paradise Lost, We, being adjacent to Salt Lake City, there is probably, there's no limit to the amount of apartments we could build in our community. They would lease up in a heartbeat because of the proximity and the ease of the commute. And so we're balancing that, and we get a lot of pushback. And I'm old enough to remember when you'd go up the canyon, and I mean, one of the resorts is called Solitude, you know. You remember going to, on a whim, going down to Arches or something. Now you've got to plan it a year in advance and have reservations and those kind of things. And yet we keep advertising. Here we are, come get us. And, you know, my wife has a t-shirt that's a spoof on Disney that says, I want to be where the people aren't. And so we're getting a lot of that feedback. And yet I work for a developer, and we want to develop. That's what we do, you know. So it's a tough balance.
Mayor Mendenhall had her hand up.
Yes, I was going to go to Mayor Mendenhall and see if she'd like to go next. And also I'd love to see if I can put anybody on the spot. Once we hear from Mayor Mendenhall, if there's maybe Mayor Palmer, could you tell us, you know, contrasting, I don't know if it'll be contrasting or similar in Salt Lake City and Harriman, but I'd love to hear kind of the similarities and differences if you would, but please, Mayor Mendenhall.
Yeah, I'm curious about similarities between Salt Lake City and Harriman. That'll be fun. We don't have single family homes happening here, as you know. Very, very little of that. There's just some infill redevelopment, mostly obviously high density, single, either studio, single bedroom or 2-bedroom, very little 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom family sized housing. Our I know I hear a little bit of the theme in the sort of the concern from a growth perspective about the preservation of the community values, really, that there's a likeness in what we as neighbors value and how we communicate with one another, and fear of losing that. The disconnect of multifamily housing, I think, exacerbates the concerns around just how difficult it is to bump into your neighbor while your kids are playing together on the sidewalk or in the street. And I've been concerned lately, reading some newer research that was in the papers a couple of weeks ago around how few Americans know their neighbors at all, even in regular in traditional, I should say, single family home setting neighborhoods. Americans are not connecting with their neighbors, regardless of multifamily high density down to neighborhood settings. There's a shift happening, and it is not necessarily unique to high growth cities like ours. So I guess, Laura, you know that Salt Lake City's dealing with growth in a number of ways. I would characterize it as prioritizing growth through community conversations that look at centralizing rather than broadly distributing growth, and trying to preserve our historic neighborhoods, keep them as intact as much as possible, and then putting design guidelines when we do allow for increased density, like our accessory dwelling unit ordinance, that helps to try to mitigate some of the perceived impacts from a design perspective. But I do think that family sized housing is not naturally being filled in our urban core. And that's a priority for me as mayor. And with the affordable housing and simply the housing and development investments we make, that we do more, we create more emphasis on the production of the family sides housing. And then I'm concerned from a cultural perspective about this separation that's happening between Americans and their neighbors across the board.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mayor Palmer of Harriman, do you mind? I know I put you on the spot and so sorry for that, but I'm just
No,
wondering.
you're fine. I was planning to chime in anyway. Thank you, Mayor Ramsey. I've talked, Andrew, you and I have talked a lot about this. Harriman, over the years, I believe, has kind of been given a rap as far as being a kind of a NIMBY community. But I really believe our residents are very educated out here. The concerns really are not, they've moved away from the high density housing, where it's coming. We know as residents, it's coming. Olympia Hills is now it's been annexed into the city. We'll be 47% multifamily at build out right now. So really the concerns really come down to the basics that this group focuses on. Is the infrastructure. It's our local needs out here. We need services more. We need more job centers locally. We need, we know we're trying to balance this regional need, but we have local needs that our residents need closer to home still to keep us from having to make the 1 hour commutes. Even, it's a 45-minute commute to Lehigh now, to all the major job centers. Infrastructure is the big issue. Water is the concern. So really the basic concerns that I think we're all concerned about are really just what our residents are concerned about out here.
Thank you for that. Ari, would you like to go next?
Well, I was going to toss out another question. I don't know how we are on time.
I think we're okay on time. I was wondering, can you slide this to the next page? Give me just 1 second. Somebody's here from ULI and I'm trying to remember whose name I saw. It's Robert in person. Thank you. I know I saw somewhere that, hey, I wonder if you might just, from the development kind of perspective, are you seeing any different kind of pushback than maybe in the past, or how do you feel like it's going from the hats you're wearing?
Yeah, I think over the last several years, we have seen an increase in opposition coming from communities to development and growth. And some of it may be a vocal minority, but it seems to have increased. I would say, the development community very much is simply trying to respond to the market. They're very market focused. And so the intent is to respond to a market demand. I think the development community also recognizes that they're a player in the community and, is looking for open conversations and community dialogue about how best the development community can fit into the needs of the community while meeting a market demand.
I put you on the spot too, but thank you so much.
You bet.
Okay. All right, go ahead. Okay, before we ask another question, apologize, I didn't see that. Mayor Zoltansky of Sandy, please.
Hi, I just want to hop in here and the cities along the East Bench are mature cities with built out and aging infrastructure. So we're investing in modernizing and restoring our infrastructure to modern standards. So when it comes to development, I'd say this, there has been a shift in the consciousness out here in Sandy, and I myself have been part of it. So going from absolutely we don't want it, not around here, not in High East Sandy, not in our neighborhoods, to we understand the housing costs. We are frustrated that our family and friends cannot afford to live in our community, that people, as mayor, my workforce has to move out of Salt Lake County to Utah County, Eagle Mountain, Saratoga Springs. There is just every year it seems to resonate more and more how the housing costs are affecting our community and also changing the culture of our community. Who can afford to live in Sandy many times now with the new builds is second and third homeowners. And so are we going to become like a luxury resort community or a community where we have young families going to school, shopping at brick and mortar stores, or people just dropping in during the peak resort seasons? So that is hitting home. And while there has been opposition to infill development, it's been mostly where it's not planned, there's not community engagement, there's not a lot of conversation beforehand. And so the efforts that our developers and our land use planners have taken to engage with the community well beforehand, I think that's really helped. There still, I'd say, is a gap between the infill development and the residential areas versus the planned area like our Karens. There is opportunity for density, for transit, for live, work, play areas, for walkable communities that are transit-oriented development. People of Sandy are embracing the Karens district as the concept of that's where we can provide the more affordable housing, even deeply affordable housing and transit. So to build up a corridor and experience, people want like a sugar house experience where they can go to cafes, go to outdoor restaurants, see some entertainment and ride their bikes through this whole new corridor experience. So that's a plus. I'd say the infill development in the traditional single family residential neighborhoods, people are very protective of that still.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Ari, please.
Yeah, so that comment got right into what I was just going to ask. So what ideas are you hearing from the public of things that resonate with them that are good ways to accommodate the growth? Is it just stop growing, or are you hearing other ideas? We just heard about putting the density in the Karens district near transit and so on. Are there things that you're hearing often?
I could just hop in and say what I'm hearing is people want a destination. They want a sense of a city center, a landmark community, things that where you can one stop, bring a lot of diversity, where a lot of diversity comes together, and just having that landmark identifiable physical neighborhood that says this is what you think of when you think of a city.
Thank you. I'm going to jump on. We just got a comment from Mayor Hall of Bluffdale. We're seeing ADUs making a difference. Do you want to elaborate on that at all?
Sure. In Bluffdale, actually, the majority of our population is now in a high density area. And we in the past have had a reputation that we're only large lots and that we're opposed to growth. And of course, we're moving into a heavy growth situation. And in some of our larger lot areas, we're finding that people are having to add those ADUs in order to accommodate for children, friends, family. And I think that is contributing to part of, a solution for some of the density situation that we have out in Bluffdale.
Great, thank you. And I see that there was a comment from Steve Shields of Harriman earlier as well, just kind of echoing what Mayor Mendenhall said. So thank you for that. All right. Okay, unless there's any other really good recommendations that you're hearing from your communities, I think we've got another question as well. Is that right? Keep going on this path that you're on. Take us on this journey.
All right, last question. You've all echoed concerns you're hearing about growth, and we just did a big value study where we found the same thing, greater concern about growth than we've ever heard. What do you think would make the public feel better about the growth that's happening? Are there things the public needs to know? Are there things we need to be doing differently as we accommodate the growth?
We're thinking about these big policy moves, right? What are the types of things that we could invest in at the state level, the local level, to kind of help the community feel better about growth? I think we heard investing in infrastructure was a big one. Yeah, I see a hand raised.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to turn to Commissioner Harvey of Weber County and then Kendall Thomas of Tooele County.
So last Tuesday, after about 2.5 years, we formally just approved a new master plan out in Weber County, out in western Weber County. It got interrupted because there were a group of active citizens who talked about making another city out there. So that was put on for a vote. That vote failed. They wanted to stay unincorporated. And so, but we did. So as soon as that failed, that would have been about almost 2 years ago that it failed. Well, I should say about a year ago, we put that back on the our work session and started working at it and did all kinds of open houses and things. And what's happened is what was, and now keep in mind, we're talking about the unincorporated portion of Weber County, not Ogden City or not any of the other cities. But what we've done is taken the lower Weber County area that were traditionally 150-foot frontages and 1 acre lots. And now a lot of that area is 3rd acre lots. There's still some 1 acre parcels out there, but there's 3rd. And then there's actually around the village nodes or some of the higher density nodes, there's going to be some higher density around those transportation areas. We took what was WFRC's information and we used it. But now it's going to be up to development and getting some of those bigger corridors. You're going to see us start to push eventually for a West Weber corridor, like a West Davis corridor or a Legacy Highway, a continuation of that through the western part of Weber County, which would go out through Hooper and West Taylor and some of those areas. So that's my comment, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Hey, up in Twilla here, we're a little unique because we are rural. We're proud, we want to maintain rural. People move here for that rural experience. And, but yet all our population's in a small corridor. The other impact we're having is schools. I know it has not direct relationship with our positions because we all have school boards and school districts. But the impact on that from not having any impact fees, it kills us out here and it kills us all. We all suffer from them impacts because our schools are too overcrowded. We need to get a change in the state legislature somehow. And I know that's going to be extremely difficult, made up because of the composition of the state legislature. But we've got in the big picture, schools is a responsibility, not directly of our positions, but of the school board, but we need to help them and we need to bring pressure so we can get some additional funding for construction impact fees. So that's a need that we have here and then we all have that same need, I'm sure. So thank you.
Amen to that. I am going to say amen to that. Utah's one of only 2 states where the school boards are not allowed to charge any impact fees. And the only way to get new schools built is to ask the voters to approve a bond to do it. And if voters say no, the schools can't be built. It's quite a handcuff on our school districts. And it has an impact on all of us. It really does. So thank you for that.
Could I,
Please.
Mayor, share
Yes,
some next
absolutely.
steps? So the next steps in this planning process is at the risk of workshop fatigue, as Andrew mentioned earlier, we will be having a series of influencer workshops coming up. Those are being coordinated between Envision Utah and the Utah Land Use Institute. I believe Weber County and Davis County will be visited first, and then we're starting to get the others scheduled this fall. So keep an eye out for those. That will be an opportunity really, again, for us to have this type of dialogue with a little bit broader group. We will take that information, we'll use that to develop some scenarios and some options for us to share more broadly with the public, solicit their input, and then we'll use that information to develop a series of big moves and policy solutions. So stay tuned. We'll have lots coming up and we'll be speaking at lots of different conferences about this. So let us know if you have opportunities for us to help get the word out.
Mayor, can I do a quick
Yes,
add on? So what happened here today with the conversation with WFRC is, this is a dumb thing to say, but it wasn't by accident. The statewide growth conversation is going to work with WFRC and our peers around the state to get advice on how to proceed and to utilize your networks and our collective networks to get the word out. So this will be an ongoing thread over the coming months. And I also want to note that WFRC has a particular role that is special as well. We serve with the Gardner Policy Institute as the chair of the technical committee. So we have that role as well. Just wanted to note that. So, you know, this is going to be really fun and interesting and unique as we move forward.
A big job. Thank you for being willing to spearhead this and to work collaboratively with everyone to do the best we can.
No
To
pressure.
have this
right?
conversation. Yeah, no pressure. So much pressure. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks to everyone for weighing in. We'll have a lot of additional opportunities as together we work to figure this out, right? And to best determine collectively as a state with input from everyone who wants to give it on how Utah grows going forward. So thank you.
Can I just add, so Laura mentioned we'll be going to Weber and Davis County first. That's next week. Thursday and Friday of next week. I forget which one's Thursday and which one's Friday, but if you got an invitation from the Utah Land Use Institute-
Weber is Thursday and Davis is Friday. So you'd be getting invitations from the Utah Land Use Institute for that.
Yes, so we would love to see you there.
Right.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on. Next, we have station area planning. We've talked a lot about the new station area plan element of last year's big housing bill, HB 462. Wasatch Front Regional Council has a big role with this, together with UTA and MAG. And we have Meg Townsend here, WFRC's Director of Community and Economic Development. Megan's going to give us a progress update, and the pieces are all in place. Progress is being made. This is a big topic. This is something that we're all talking about in our communities, and there's quite a bit of work to be done. So Megan, if you'd take it away with our station area plan update, we'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor Ramsey. Hey, speaking of growth, HB 462, the station area plan provisions within HB 462 recognize that our transit stations are a really great way for us to accommodate a lot of that growth in a way that has access to the rest of our region. Right, so I'm going to talk about our station area planning and give you an update on where we're at with all of this. We heard a lot about this in our May meeting, so I want to show you what we've been working on. I'll do a quick overview of station area planning as it and what the Wasatch Front Regional Council's role. I'll announce our first round of technical assistance awards out of the station area planning technical assistance funding, and I will give you an update on where we're at with all things certification. As a reminder, the objectives, the goals of the station area planning provisions are to increase the availability and affordability of housing, to promote sustainable environmental conditions, to enhance access to opportunities, and increase transportation choices and connections. That should sound really familiar. That's right in line with our Wasatch Choice Vision. All of these objectives then feed into the required components of station area planning. Those are the vision. There's a vision of how these objectives will be met and how the city envisions that station area growing and changing. A map for rail stations, that map needs to have a half-mile radius around the station. And for BRT stations that are required to produce station area planning, that means they have their exclusive lane. That radius needs to be a 1/4 mile around the station. There's a 5-year implementation plan detailing all the things the city is going to do to meet those objectives, an explanation of how the 4 objectives are met, and there needs to be a public involvement and stakeholder engagement process throughout the station area planning work. As a quick reminder, the city may demonstrate that prior actions satisfy these requirements, and the city may demonstrate that satisfying certain requirements is not going to be feasible. It's impracticable for a particular station area. That's a review of the station area plan goals and the components required. That's super brief, but we have lots more on our website about the requirements there. As a reminder, we have technical assistance available through the MPOs to complete all or part of the requirements of station area plans. That is being programmed in partnership with the Mountain Land Association of Governments, our sister organization to the south, the Utah Transit Authority, and with GOEO, the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity. Awards are going to be made out of this funding every couple of months. So we're trying to kind of turn and burn on this, keep it readily available for you as a resource and not be a bottleneck in your city meeting the requirements of station area planning. The first application was due July 18th. That application is out, it's rolling. You can apply anytime, but we set a July 18th deadline initially, and I'm happy I get to announce those awards to you today. So in the WFRC area, we were able to award 5 projects. All 5 that applied were eligible, and so we're going to get working with all 5 of those different applicants. That's 6 communities receiving awards, and we're going to be doing planning for 8 stations within those 5 projects. Those awards are the Pleasant View Frontrunner Station. That will be working with Far West and Weber County. There's some unincorporated Weber County in there, still kind of formalizing those stakeholders, but hopefully we'll capture that whole station area. The Roy Frontrunner Station, the Murray North Station, that's a combined effort with Murray City and Mill Creek City. The Midville City is going to be planning 2 other stations, the Midville Fort Union Station and the Midville Center Station. And then West Jordan City and Midville City have come together to plan for 3 stations, and I'll talk about that project just in a second here. We were able to make $910,000 in awards, nearly $1 million in awards in the WFRC area. And MAG is finalizing their projects, and I'll let them announce theirs very first. But MAG will be making some awards out of this first round as well. I'm going to highlight one of these projects.
Wait, Meg, let me just mention one thing. Go back for 1 sec, please. These are awards from the station area planning funding that we have through the state. We should note that there are other communities that have been moving ahead on doing station area planning, not just out of this round of funding. So for example, Farmington City just adopted their station area plan. They have great development in conjunction with UTA's TOD team, and we've helped them through the TLC program. And so there's a lot of other communities that are doing this already. These are additive to that from the additional funds that have been provided. So lots of progress happening now in the region.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. And some of those are funded out of our Transportation and Land Use Connection program too. So we've got lots of these ongoing efforts. These 5 are brand new. West Jordan and Midville, let me talk about this one a little bit. I'm really excited. These cities came together. I didn't force them together. They came together all by themselves. They're going to be working together to plan 3 stations. That is the West Jordan Center Station, Historic Gardner Station, and the Bingham Junction Station. So they recognize that their station areas overlap. That top right image, it's a little small, but you can see lots of overlap in those half-mile radii station areas. And it crosses their boundaries, and they want to do a cohesive plan, come together and really make those station area plans realistic because they've come together to work on them. So these cities have already done a lot of work looking at the existing conditions of these stations, kind of looking at opportunities and barriers that they might need to overcome in their planning process. They're really ready to hit the ground running. This was our largest award at $350,000. Those 2 cities and those 3 stations, I think that will go a long way, and we'll have really great planning work come out of this. I'm excited. They're ready to go. They put in September 1st for their start date. So as you can see, this money can get moving really quickly. We can get started quick on these, and we hope to do so if your cities are interested in applying. The next deadline, I'm using quotation marks because that application is going to stay open, but the next moment when we'll review applications will be September 19th. So if you get your application in prior to September 19th, we'll review in September and hopefully be awarding in October, really cruising on these. Please reach out if you have any questions about applying and what's eligible. We're working super close with UTA, really close with GOYO and MAG, and this is pretty fun. This has been rapid. So let us know if you have any questions about applying.
Meg, one more thing I want to mention. Oh, sorry, Beth. One more thing I want to mention is you're talking about collaboration to get these things done. We know that collaboration is needed. Robert was talking about this collaboration with the private sector as well. And so I want to give acknowledgement, particularly also to the counties who are partners in all of this work also. I mean, it takes a village, so to speak. In this case, a city, a county, the private sector, transportation agencies to get these things done. For example, Salt Lake County has been a great partner and longtime contributor to the Transportation and Land Use Connection program. Davis and Weber counties. Commissioner Harvey was just talking about the work that they're doing in unincorporated county. So there's just such great collaboration happening across all the levels of government here. And in this case, with state funding to fund these projects. So it's really terrific. So thanks counties as well.
Thanks, Andrew. And thank you so much, Megan, that I am so excited to see these start to come about, because I think that this is going to be a really critical element that we can do to maximize all of our strategic locations for station areas. I just kind of wanted to talk about the fact that Andrew mentioned that Farmington City has been working on theirs, and there are several other communities who have been doing a lot of work. As you guys know, we broke ground on the Clearfield TOD, which is our largest TOD location, a couple months ago. And this is one of the things that I think is the most critical, is that we're looking at things from a regional perspective. And that's what I would like us to do. I mean, yes, we have fixed acreage for a lot of these locations, but looking at the broader perspective, which is what these stationary planning can do, is how are you getting to those stations if you don't live within that half-mile radius? How are we looking at other things like the road structures adjacent to that? All of these things, I think, really can even add more value moving forward. I did just want to give you some perspective in case there was a question about how many stations are left. And I'm just going to tell you the total number of stations that we have as of today, but knowing some of them have developed out and some of them are still waiting. So we have 91 core bus routes throughout our entire service area. We have 72 rail stations, 15 are commuter rail, 50 are light rail, 15 are bus rapid transit, and then we have 7 streetcar locations. And just to give you some perspective, I'm just going to use Sugar House as an example of that as well. The streetcar, the S line, if you guys are familiar with it, that runs down through the heart of Sugar House, that is roughly a mile and change in terms of length. But the amount of development that is adjacent to that and the goal that was really developed in this space has thus far been over $2 billion of investment just in this location. And the amount of connectivity has continued to increase, and that's what we would like to see. And I just wanted to thank everybody who has worked so hard to get us here, especially WFRC. You guys were really critical. MAG, the league, and our UTA staff. Our UTA staff, we've actually geared up we have additional staff now specific to our TOD group so that we can accommodate all of this and make sure everyone can get these things going. So thank you for letting me say that.
Thanks, Trustee Holbrook. Hey, before I move on to certification, are there any questions on technical assistance? What we've funded, what we can fund?
Yeah, that was a question I had. How many are you anticipating that you'll fund, and what's the plan that way?
Yeah, so we have $5 million over 2 years that's shared with MAG. I think we estimated that we could work with 30 cities and stations on that with that funding, but all these projects are so different. Cities are coming to this with prior planning work probably for the most part, right? It's not for most cities, it's not the first time they've thought about planning these stations in some way. And so all these projects are a little different. We're gonna keep spending it till it's gone and try and get technical assistance in city hands quickly. If we get 5 every 2 months for the next 2 years, right? We've got a good, that's math, but that's a lot of projects. That's 30 plus projects. So that's not really an answer to your question. All of them. Okay. And if this funding runs out, we have other technical assistance resources that are ready to go and support this, the Transportation and Land Use Connection Program being one. Okay, I'm going to keep going to certification. So just as a reminder, in May, when we met, we discussed the Wasatch Front Regional Council's policy on certifying station area plans. So the Regional Growth Committee recommended that policy to the Wasatch Front Regional Council for adoption. That policy was adopted. And here's a little overview of the process that we agreed on. So when cities submit their station area plans to, oh, that's a little small. Sorry, I'll talk through it. When cities submit their station area plans to the Wasatch Front Regional Council, the idea is that we've already been working with communities on these. And so we'll have worked with the city to ensure that they meet the requirements of the legislation. Staff will review those station area plans. then staff will make a recommendation to you, the Regional Growth Committee, to either certify or not certify those station area plans. And that recommendation will not be a surprise to the cities either. So that'll be a back and forth conversation with cities. Communities will know whether or not they're being recommended for certification, have the opportunity to adjust what they've submitted, et cetera. Regional Growth Committee will review those station area plans and make a recommendation to the Wasatch Front Regional Council to certify those station area plans, certify that they've met the requirements of statute. We'll be looking through a lens of reasonableness. Have they reasonably met the requirements of the station area planning statute? And then finally, WFRC will provide a certificate of compliance to that community for that station area. So that's a reminder of our station area plan certification process. So WFRC is providing technical assistance and certifying station area plans, all in collaboration with our partners. We're making progress.
Can
on
I
this.
ask,
Oh,
can I
sure.
just tack on to that and just say, there's a very real expectation at the legislature to see progress with this. They are looking forward to seeing the progress that's been made on these station area plans over this next year before the next legislative session. So I appreciate you going through the process. This is something that we all need to be. We can't think this isn't a priority. None of us in our communities that this applies to, it is priority, and it's very much a priority to the legislature. And so thank you to you and the team here for, I just wanted to maybe add a little bit of emphasis to this is the way it's going to work, and it does have to work, and we have to be able to show that we've made a lot of progress on these station area plans to the legislature before the next session.
Thanks, Mayor Ramsey. And we're making progress on the staff side too. Andrew, sorry, did you have a comment? Oh, you did a wave. Okay. We're making progress on the staff side as well. We have recently posted this guideline. These guidelines, it's just 2 pages. It's kind of a checklist cities can run through on their own to make sure that what they're planning to do for their station area planning will meet all these requirements, and then to self-audit kind of their station area plan. It's meant to be a helpful tool. That's just an image of it. It's available online at that link that you see on the screen. We also had some trainings in July for cities, and we will continue to do those trainings. We will also soon be making available the official form to submit a station area plan. So there'll be a link on our website of where cities can submit those. So I just wanted to keep you updated on the progress we're making, remind you of the decisions we've made, and see if there are any questions.
I have kind of a dumb question, but what does the certification actually mean? It just means they've gone through the process, and where does it hold most merit? Is that what the legislature you're thinking?
So the certification will be, it's certifying that the requirements of station area planning have been met. That certification becomes part of what the city will submit to DWS as the overall package of how they're meeting the requirements of HB 462, which includes the moderate income housing plans. So it's kind of a piece of the housing bill, and cities have to do other things with their moderate income housing plans and submit that all together. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So much going on. We appreciate your help and your expertise. We're going to move on to item 4 on our agenda, which we love, WFRC funding opportunities for local governments. We're always grateful for funding opportunities, and the Wasatch Front Regional Council has 9 programs that provide funding and technical assistance to our communities, averaging about $50 million a year. And honestly, administering these programs is one of the most important things that WFRC does. We appreciate that Meg is still with us, and she's going to represent the staff in giving us a brief explanation of these programs so that all of us here on this meeting are aware of what they are and how to apply for your piece of this technical assistance planning and this money that WFRC has.
Thanks, Mayor Ramsey. Hi, it's me again, Megan Townsend, Community and Economic Development Director for the Wasatch Front Regional Council. I'm going to run you through a quick presentation that just highlights all of our funding programs here at WFRC. One of our key purposes is to help local governments accomplish their objectives. One of the ways we get to do that is through these funding programs we have. We have 9. So today I will remind you of these programs, introduce you to the program leads, point you to the funding programs announcement, and ask that you look for the requests for letters of intent that will be sent at the end of August. Here are the 9 funding and assistance programs that we have here at the Wasatch Front Regional Council. I'm going to really briefly go through this list. The first 4 on this list are our short-range planning programs. These fund capital transportation projects. The first is the Surface Transportation Program. There's the Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Program, CMAQ program, the Carbon Reduction Program, which is new, and the Transportation Alternatives Program for Active Transportation. Ben Wfrc, if you'd stand over here, Ben Wfrc is the program lead for these 4 programs. I just want to make a note about the new program up here, the Carbon Reduction Program that provides funding for transportation projects that reduce on-road carbon dioxide emissions. So if you'll, in your meeting packet, if you'd like to kind of follow along with these programs, you have this funding programs packet. It has a list of all these programs and like 1 or 2 sentences about what they fund. So you can kind of follow along there. The next 2 programs on this list, the Transportation and Land Use Connection Program, our Planning Technical Assistance Program, and the Station Area Plan Technical Assistance Program, which you just heard all about. That one's new. Those are our Planning Technical Assistance Programs, and I'm the program lead for those. So come to me with any questions about those 2. The next 2, the Community Development Block Grant Program and the Community Impact Board Program, where we assist applications. Those are Christy Dahlberg, program lead there. Thank you, Christy. And then finally, the Wasatch Front Economic Development District, WFEDD, assisting communities and accessing EDA funds. That is Marsha White. Marsha White is our economic development lead there. So thank you. Those are our program leads. The first 5 here, those are all on the same application cycle. They share a letter of intent. That application cycle is coming up soon. I'm going to walk you through the timeline on that.
Can I just interject that this idea of they share a letter of intent means you don't have to remember the programs really. And you don't have to know which program you're aiming for. You just tell us about the need that you're trying to serve in your community.
Thanks, Ted. Okay, so here's the timeline for applying for those first 5 programs, the short range programs and the TLC, Transportation and Land Use Connection Program. It's August now. We're announcing the funding programs. The official funding programs announcement will be made next week at the Wasatch Front Regional Council meeting. Following that, a notice for letters of intent will go out, or a call for letters of intent. That will come with this nice funding programs packet with a description of all these programs. But like Ted said, if you apply to the wrong program, we're going to help guide you to the right one. So don't worry too much. The letters of intent are due September 29th. Following that, we will make an invitation to you to apply for all those eligible projects. You'll get an invitation to apply. Those applications will be due in December. We'll review those applications over the winter, and that gives us time to make a funding recommendation in the spring. For TLC, the spring time is when projects funding is announced. So keep an eye out for that call in your email. The call for letters of intent, it'll come out at the end of August. Up on the screen, I am trying to put the contact information for all of the program leads. Ben, myself, Christy, and Marsha. There's our contact information. You can call anybody in our shop and we'll point you to the right person. So don't worry too much about jotting all those down rapidly, but feel free to do so. Also on the screen, a picture of this funding programs packet that I've been holding up. That should be in your meeting materials today. And there's a table on the second page of all of the different requirements of each of these programs, and then a 1-page summary of each of those programs as well. So take a look at that. This has been incredibly brief, and so we're here to answer all the questions you have about these programs, but we just want to give you a heads up that we're going to call for applications soon. Anything to add to this? Anything I missed? Okay.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. We love presentations that tell us about how to access a piece of that pie. Thank you. All right, item 5 on our agenda is our transportation studies of interest. WFRC works with partners to study a variety of critical questions related to transportation. I think we mostly know that. Some of these are big policy questions, like what are the implications of reducing transit fares to 0? You know, that pilot project happened, that experiment happened, and we have data from the results of ridership and what that meant. So, you know, what happens if we do try to do that, you know, in a big picture? These are some important questions, and some help understanding how transportation is changing and what we should do in response. Like questions like that, and also changes to freight and even parking. Right? There's a lot going on. We live in a very transitioning world right now, and these are big questions. We have a 1 minute per study overview. Of a, or less, I'm told. Okay, sorry. Nobody ever wants to be last on the agenda. You know, you get like 2 seconds. To talk about a handful of these key studies and just really to put them on everybody's radar so that we can find out if there's anything we want to dig deeper on. So Julie Bjornstad leads WFRC's effort on many of these. Julie, take it away.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so often when someone from long range planning stands up here and gives a presentation, it's like what Jory did earlier, where we're giving you an overview of the long range transportation plan and its planning process. But the staff on the long range planning team does a lot more than just the long range planning. The regional transportation plan, we're engaged in a lot of transportation studies throughout the planning process. So Jory mentioned earlier the external forces and policies that we spent a good portion of the earlier part of our process studying. And some of these forces and policies we told you we'd wrap into our modeling efforts, our planning efforts, and some we've mentioned in the past that we would do a little bit deeper dive and additional study was needed. And so for a handful of those forces and policies, we're doing just that. We have regional studies that are looking at the impacts of these policies and these technologies on our transportation system. And so I'll just quickly, 1 minute or less per slide, go through these 6 studies that the long range planning team is working on to help inform how these would impact travel behavior, our travel decisions, even our land use and our community impacts. So the first study I wanted to highlight is
Julie,
that.
can I
Yep.
just say, so as Julie's going through these, make a mental note of any that you feel like, yeah, I'd really like to learn more about it. And we can either get you more information outside of a meeting or possibly a future agenda item.
So that first one I want to highlight, Mayor Ramsey mentioned, is the Regional Zero Fare Study. We kicked this off a few months ago. We're working with MAG, UDOT, and UTA. And you'll see that those are the partners we work a lot with on these regional studies. So this study is looking at what would happen if the regional transportation system became zero fare, either for the whole study or for certain portions of the population, what that would impact would be on operations of UTA, financially, how we might pay for it. So this is looking at the trade-offs of going zero fare. And the timeline for this is it should be wrapped up by the end of the year. Another study we've been working on with those same partners, but this time Salt Lake County is also included, is a parking modernization study. We know that with a lot of changes in both our land use and our transportation with e-commerce and delivery, our parking needs are shifting. And what does that parking do to our economy, our built environment, our travel choices? And then what are some options that local communities have with dealing with how much parking is needed, what to do with either parking that is no longer needed? Is that, can we do something with development there? Is that a place that we can put housing? Again, this is end of the year for the wrap up. And then this is a new study we've just kicked off. Nikki Navio in our office is managing this, and it's an urban freight and delivery study. This ties back to those two those two forces, e-commerce and then freight. We have a lot more freight on our local streets now that we're all shopping on Amazon and online and avoiding stores. And how can local community, like what is the magnitude of this and how can local communities plan better for the impacts that are happening on our local streets? This is also looking at what types of warehousing or other freight related industries might need, we might need as communities to meet the demands of new urban goods in the e-commerce. And so again, this is wrapped up by the end of the year. This is funded by Wfrc, but we're partnering with MAG and UDOT on this. So again, a regional effort. And then the last active study I wanted to mention, and Ted's leading this, working titles to transportation and land use context study. If you can come up with something better, let us know. But the idea here is that often when we do our planning efforts, we look at our travel demand, vehicles going through. So we are planning our roads for vehicles, and what happens when those planned facilities are incompatible with our land uses. If you have a vision that you want something to be urban and walkable, a 7-lane facility may not be the appropriate answer there. And so how can we reconcile this, and what are the impacts on our economic opportunities, safety, and how can we better implement the vision. So
Quick
this is
note,
something that,
UTA is also a partner on that one. Sorry.
oh, I'm sorry, UTA. Yeah, so this is a partnership with MAG, UDOT, and UTA, sorry again. And I think that the timeline here is early 2023. But this is one of the efforts that will have a big public involvement, a big stakeholder meeting coming up. And so if you're interested in participating in that stakeholder meeting, let us know. And then 2 studies I just wanted to highlight that are coming up with RFQs releasing later this summer, meaning mid-September, or early fall, meaning anytime after September, is the Regional Transit Signal Prioritization Study. This is a joint effort again with MAG, UDOT, UTA, and Wfrc. Transit signal prioritization allows transit vehicles who are maybe behind schedule to take priority at the signal. So the signal would change so that transit vehicles can stay on schedule. And so this is already something that's being implemented on Redwood Road. We run that in UTA and UDOT in partnership. And so this is looking at how we can expand that program throughout the region, what modes that can be applied to, and how that is also related to connected vehicles. And then the last study I'll highlight again is upcoming RFQ release early in the fall. Again, the 4 transportation agencies, and this is a regional bike program study. This is looking at how we can do a better job of counting where bicyclists are going, whether they're on trails or local roads. How do we manage that data, store it, maintain it, and share it between partners? So those are just 6 of the studies that I wanted to mention that we're working on, in addition to the regional transportation plan that Jory highlighted earlier. And as Ted mentioned, if one of these studies you want more information about, you want to be involved in, or you would like us to come back and give you an update on how the study is going or the outcomes of the study, please let somebody on the Wfrc team know, and they'll let the long range planning team know. That was less than 5 minutes, I think. So
Yeah, well done. Very well done. Thank you.
I have gotten a comment I can't see in a chat.
Okay. Thanks so much, Julie. Appreciate that. Okay. Item 6, other business. Our next meeting is October 20th, 2022. You can see on your agenda, we've got some upcoming meetings. Wfrc Council meeting is next Thursday, the 25th. Joint Policy Advisory Committee, September 1st. And then Active Transportation meeting, October 12th. We have the Utah League of Cities and Towns annual conference. We appreciate Wfrc always your support and input at that conference, October 5th through 7th. UDOT annual conference, October 25th through 27th. The AMPO annual conference, the 25th through the 28th of October. And UAC has their annual conference, November 14th through the 18th. Wfrc, there's never a dull moment here. Regional Growth Committee, never a dull moment. There's always a lot going on, and we appreciate everything you're doing. Do you have any final thoughts before I ask for a motion to adjourn?
Just note that, as usual, we'll send out all the materials from this meeting shortly after this meeting so that you can refer to any of them if you'd like.
Okay, thank you. I don't see Mayor Caldwell, so I'm going to open the floor to anyone who'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. Was that Richard Snellgrove? Thank you very much.
Second. You're
Councilman.
welcome.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, John Pullman. Thank you so much. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That is a great vote. Good turnout. Thank you so much for being here, all of you. And thank you for your work, and we'll be in touch. See you all soon.